Hello, Seekers. This is Black Pope Vice. I am going to make a video about Magic Terraforming. Hopefully, this time the video will be without any problems. So, Magic Terraforming sounds like, quite a big thing. You might be thinking, oh, well, it's going to be a lot. But it's, as a guru who is here to expand one's faith, I have to set it straight. So you don't get unrealistic expectations and then you don't manifest what you're looking for. Or what, you don't manifest what is realistic to look for. So, first you need a cemetery that's kind of, private and out of the way. Some of these, I'm looking at a tombstone here. The last someone was buried. I think the most recent person here was buried in year 2000, but other people were born in 1944. There's a 1933 here, 1959. There's people from the 1880s up here. Like there's an infant grave all the way up here. Here's a little kind of habitation circle right here. I'm not too familiar with that white, but the one that hangs out in there and that like branchier, I know well. So, Magic Terraforming. Now, sometimes dramatic things will happen in the cemetery. Like, for instance, right there, that tombstone, I'm positive, was not always there. And I know that, and my argument for this is, I remember finding a flame aura quartz right in that location. And I was like, this is a really good piece, because I use them for, magic enchantments. I was like, I don't think I left this out here, but I'm going to leave it out here, but just cover it up with some branches, and leaves and stuff, and just leave it there. And, I mean, it's not over on this side. No one else would have, no one comes here to take things. No one explores this cemetery like that intently. If they did, they would have taken other things by now. But that's just an idea of like the most you'll see in terms of terraforming. You'll see maybe tombstones, maybe some trees appear, but nothing too radical like you can change the shape of the earth. Now, if you're in a cemetery, you're going to want to have a good portal energy area. Now, when I mean by portals, I don't mean places you travel through. Leia Wendell has talked about portals and earth gates in this way. I have not experienced portals and earth gates in this way, but you can just kind of tell when you look at an area where it has a lot of energy. Now, if I did the rites properly, I could probably figure out how to do some portal stuff, but I have never had any success with that. I've almost astral traveled once, but that's the story for another time. But you're going to want to make sure your cemetery has something like this. And it seems mundane, but it's not. Like, you'll have an appreciation for an area's energy when you see it in person, but just get an idea that there is something there. But back to the terraforming. So, terraforming can happen by a lot of ways. It is very conceivable that the crystal itself resulted in the change of the tombstone. Or it was a catalyst, considering, I've been working on this cemetery for years, but there are people who think that that magic really happens by quantum accidents. Essentially, that like we appeared in the alternate universe that where that fireball or whatever did manifest. I don't think that's necessarily an argument, but I mean, if people are willing to see, because that's actually a very popular theory in magic about an alternative, part of the multiverse timeline of syncs up in like the universe that happens where a fireball appears is what happened, is actually very popular. I think a lot of, maybe not people who watch my stuff, but if you talk around some circles, people will maybe talk about that idea. But back to the crux at hand with magic terraforming. So eventually you're also going to want a big workspace. Not to say that you can't work at other places at the cemetery, but you're going on a big altar. Now, I did not do some of this. Her name's Autumn. I've not met her yet, but she has shown things around here. I believe she's a person. That glass thing is something I found in a terrarium that of mine in the forest that I had about a year ago. And the terrarium was kind of a little out of the way. So like the person who, this is an explorer. I think she put that there too. That baggie is a gift and a note for her if she ever comes back. I don't know what she's up to. But if you're terraforming cemetery over multiple years, which is what I've done at this point, eventually you're probably going to run into someone, another magician. It's going to happen. You're going to have to prepare for that. I mean, someone comes here and does, like, because I used to put my waste here. Part of the things I used to do to terraform is dump my black magic waste in the cemetery. And for some reason, someone came along and put the rocks back there. What was I using the rocks for? I was experimenting with weaponized magic. I have gotten pretty well. I have a pretty good idea. I mean, it needs to be refined, but more specifically, training is what's necessary. But I figured out how to do melee magic rods, like a striking weapon, like that. That works. Like the ranged weapon combat is a bigger issue. Figuring out how to arc between the rod and the target. I've had some successes, but nothing repeated. So one of the ways you terraform the cemetery is you're going to have to, take waste. Not only from experiments like this, but also like candle magic. I've been burying candle magic in the cemetery for quite a long time. So you have all this surplus magical energies floating around. Now, I'm going to tell you something I discovered quite a few years ago. I've been experimenting with this. I call it Bind Rune 42 because the numerological value of this equation is 42. Interesting, right? What does it mean? These are pink or octarine. I use octarine as my pink. Pink as my octarine. This is black, these are purple, and that's blue. So this bind rune is basically the idea of a radiation transmuter which results in lowering the veil between the worlds. And I've been because when Fukushima happened, I freaked out about it, and I kind of obsessed over it, and I guess one of the things when I started getting into magic is like, how can I, address Fukushima? And I was like, you can magic's real, transmutation's real, why can't we transmute radiation? sooner or later, came up with this guy idea, and I've definitely planted equivalents of this and others into the Pacific Ocean, mainly along the Alaskan coast. I hope to get some specimens into Japan in the next year or two, and maybe some more stuff into Hawaii, and maybe more along the western coast of the United States. But you're going to want these kinds of designs in the cemetery itself, even though this was originally used to describe radiation, black thyrses. This can also describe the negative entropic death energies that are associated with graveyards, particularly graveyards that have quite a few Masons, because there are quite a few Masons here. Now, so besides dumping, magical waste here of various kinds, you're going to want to be able to transmute it. And this is the base runic design right here. Now, I'll go over basically the rune stabs in here. So I do it and I draw them in an order. I do Hagalaz, then Uruz, Wunyo, Kenez, Thurisals, Kenez, Gebo, Fehu. The Fehu is for radiating, but the equation is Uruz meaning first and last. So this also means crystal. This is forming. This is the binding element. This is control, transmute. In this case, the black thirst could be radiation or the death energy. Kenaz, transmute. Gebo relates to Grundagap. And Grundagap is an all potential. Runes mean many different things, but in this case, Gebo has to do with the magical charge void is Grundagap that exists everywhere, that kind of things filled up. So when you increase this, you're not only increasing this all potentiality of the magic, but another way of relating to Gebo is you lower the world, the veils between the worlds, through this rune. The reason why I came up with this design specifically, though, Gebo can also mean lovers. So the runes, they're ambiguous. Not to say that I intentionally designed the original radiation transmuters to bring about lovers, but there were earlier generations and they weren't painted. They were all painted red at the time, or weren't even painted at all, which differentiates the runes. The runes are they'll be ambiguous if they're allowed to be ambiguous. So that's very important to understand. But I designed this bind rune, with the intention of empowering my people. And I think it's worked. I think there's been, some unintended consequences of lowering the veil, but I think in many ways it has overall benefited. In the future, I would keep, because you can do other rune stabs here that accomplish very similar things, like Iwas. You can do Ansus. There's other symbols you can put here that will accomplish ability gains. But this one in particular has to do with terraforming. And you don't have to have it to be octarine. You can have it to be black. But I just want to say, if you're going to be terraforming, to such a degree, be careful. You're still magically terraforming. This is not necessarily the safest of all things to be doing. Now, just one other way of understanding this bind rune is you can do it with electrical energy from telephone posts to heal. And you're probably going to want stuff like this in your terraforming areas, because at some point you're going to want to figure out how to heal the trees. because the trees are very, very important for figuring out how to regenerate the environment with magic. So if you're terraforming, you have all these trees available to you. And the last thing, why do we want to terraform the cemeteries? The Japanese have a theory that kami are the result of energetic breakdowns of human bodies. Old Irish mound builders believe in something very similar. I've done experimentations that suggest that death energy can be used for the creation of familiars. So we want these cemeteries basically to create familiars and wights. One of the things we can do easily, that especially help terraform the cemetery further, is the generation of the black sealy. So there's this English Protestant priest who used to hang out with the fairies on the mounds, and he was eventually disappeared, and they assumed the queen of the fairies took him. But he said there was 3 races of the fae, and I assume he's talking about the sealy rather than the unsealy, who are the winter fairy. But he's talking about the summer and spring fairy, the sealy. He says there are white, green, and black. And I think the black sealy are a result of cemeteries and such easier. Now, we can use the sealy to terraform in ways like you tell the sealy, and I don't see them. I wanted to say I don't see the fairies or these wights. I see their habitation circles, and I know they're there. But you can tell them, like, give a command, like, I don't want so much poison oak in the cemetery, and, over the course of months, you'll see less and less. You can transport wights and stuff from area to area by using baby trees. You make sure it gets attached to the tree, and then you bring the tree to a new location. And I've done that a few times with the cemetery with black sealy, because I was experimenting with creating them at another location, and I brought them to this area, and I'm liking the results. But ultimately, we want cemetery trees for their wood to make undead golems. Leia Wendell says this is very important for making undead golems, though she has nothing about animation. Animation seems to be the big issue, figuring out undead golems, but you need the wood to give them any sort of essence. Anyway, I've given a lot about how to terraform, why we terraform, what we're doing in the cemeteries, and ultimately the end goal of farming them for trees. Anyway, I think that has been quite good. Oh, I want to quickly note, when I talked about the bind rune 42 for electrical energy, that's an AWAS, or the letter E, and that's Uruz. Anyway, have a good one. Blessings.